with a manifestation to call Hera into our sacred circle. Powerful Hera, Queen of Olympus, reign over the sacred circle of women with watchful benevolence and grace. Be the steady voice of regal power within our psyches. Show us how to hold the space for our deepest truths, our values and intentions. Be the raging storm calmed to peace in our queenly hearts. Show us how to master our emotions, to be their ruler, not to be ruled by them. Allow us to renew our connection with the divine feminine, to be our ever energetic in spirit, ambitious and inspired while pursuing our highest goals and dreams. Teach us to advocate for our emotional well-being and to confront obstacles head-on with ferocious tenacity and willpower. We are queens of our own heroic journeys. We are powerful, fierce, beautiful, and intelligent. We are the calm after the storm, the protectors of our domains and those whom we love and cherish. Great Queen Hera, be with us now as we join together in a sacred circle of majesty shared among each other. Be with us and guide us to higher awareness of self and empowerment. Take another deep, cleansing breath. And when you are ready, we will join together once more in the sacred space of the archetype of Hera. Wonderful. Well, again, welcome to this wonderful session. I'm so glad you're here to be with me during another archetypology class. And for those of you watching on the replay, if you have never watched one before, thank you for participating, and I welcome you to contact me with any feedback or questions you may have after watching the replay. So we will begin with a deep look at the mythos and significance of Hera. Now, Hera is a daughter of the Titans Rhea and Kronos, one of the children which Kronos swallowed, and of course was released by Zeus, her brother. Hera, like all of the Olympian gods and their offspring and demigods, are absolute. They are unchanging, immortal beings. Whatever attributes they have, personality-wise, are constant and are an unwavering manifestation of a particular viewpoint, power, and what they presided over, and still do, we assume. So in the case of Hera, she is not only the queen of the gods through marriage to her brother Zeus and rules as queen of Olympus, she is also the goddess who presides over, we would say, the matron goddess of the sanctity of marriage and that beautiful union. She is also a protector and the goddess of women and childbirth. Now, when we think of childbirth, sometimes we think of Artemis, her stepdaughter, who acted as midwife to her mother. But in this case, she wasn't actually the goddess of childbirth. She was and one who aided in the bringing forth of new life. So in Hera's case, she is actually the goddess of women and childbirth and marriage. So she is the all-powerful, protective, queenly matron goddess. And as such is incredibly sacred and powerful and one with whom you want to be on good terms. And I will get into that more as we move forward. Thus far, we have learned about goddesses whose characteristics are more along the lines of the great creator, goddess of bounty and harvest and motherhood, goddess of grains and queen of the underworld, the goddess of the hermitess, sacred fire. Now I want to focus on the queen. That energy is extremely powerful. She has an incredibly volatile, passionate personality. She is calculating, vindictive, vengeful, and jealous. And I say that with the utmost respect for the goddess, of course. And there are reasons why she behaves that way. Her marriage to Zeus was always something of a source of tumultuous stress for her, seeing as Zeus was the archetype that presided over kingly nature, and his was the power of creating and assisting to create the next generation of gods. Of course, not being the only one. He wasn't the only father of the, the children of these children of Titans. He certainly had a lot of children, and many of whom are demigods who became heroes. Now, we wouldn't have the stressors, the tyrannical situations, you might say, or the inspiration behind a lot of these heroic tales of the demigods, Hera's stepchildren, if it hadn't been for Hera. She was relentless in her pursuit of maintaining her space and her status, and you don't mess with the queen. Anyone who got in her husband's path that wasn't her would suffer the consequences. And of course, it never stopped Zeus. So her marriage, and seeing as she's the goddess who presides over the sanctity of marriage, right, was a focal point in the ancient myths, and is also still to this day something that we recognize. So it's justifiable, given what we know about what Hera's powers are, what she presides over, that she would often be in a vengeful, jealous wrath over what was happening to her husband, the offspring, the thorns in her side, so to speak. So aside from that, I do not believe that this encapsulates all of Hera. And it certainly does not. It's just an emotional aspect of her personality. And these are actions she took to maintain her place and garner respect and understanding from anyone who would seek to potentially supplant her or not show her the respect that she was given. Not only would she do this, she also caused some issues and hardship for the women, the consorts, demigoddesses, goddesses, and mortals alike, who would become impregnated by Zeus. So, being the goddess of childbirth, it was a difficulty for these women and immortal beings to bear Zeus's offspring out of wedlock. And there are famous myths that have to do with that. Of course, there is a lot that has to do with the famed stepchildren, Artemis and Apollo, and their mother, Leto, and what she went through to attempt to prevent Leto from giving birth to these children, and what she went to saying that they could not be born on terra firma, on solid ground, on solid land, on any place on earth. So, of course, Zeus and the other gods that were helping him helped find a loophole for that one, and it was a floating island, the island of Delos, that was shrouded in mist, because they also couldn't be viewed by Helios, the sun. So that floating island shrouded in mist was the only way that Leto could give birth to Artemis. And then, as I was mentioning, Artemis then consequently assisted her mother in giving birth to her twin brother, Apollo. And those are who we know represent powers connected to the moon and the sun, the huntress and the god of the sun and music and healing. So there's a lot to Hera's mythology, a lot to what she did. One of the stories of the myths that I want to touch on today is the myth that has to do with Io, another one of Zeus's conquests in the realm of having other children, extramarital affairs, so to speak. Hera turned Io into a heifer, a cow, and had her friend Argos, the 100-eyed giant, watch over her. Of course, when Zeus found out about this, he flew into a rage, because this isn't the first time Argos had helped Hera out. He was a 100-eyed giant. She often had Argos watch Zeus and report to her about what he found, keep her informed, as one would, being the goddess of marriage, making sure things were on the up and up, which of course often they were not. When Zeus caught wind of this, though, he slew Argos, her friend. And in the passion of rage and grief, she took the 100 eyes of Argos, and to honor him, placed them into the feathers of her sacred animal, the peacock. And as you know, the peacock wears a little crown on its head. It's very regal. So, and as you saw in the painting, and allow me to go back to this to show you what I'm talking about. In the painting I created, Hera and the peacock, you will see, let me bounce back here for a second, that in the image of the painting I created, there is the representation of Hera placing the eyes of Argos into the tail feathers of the peacock, which is why, and you can see I'm wearing peacock earrings, it appears that the peacock feathers have eyes. So that is the ancient Grecian mythological story of how we have peacock feathers with eyes. And it's a very moving story and very sacred to Hera. And it's poignant because, at that point, then she just felt even more vulnerable in her situation with her husband. But it never stopped Hera from pursuing her other works. This was only one aspect of who Hera was, and mythologically speaking, and is energetically speaking now, in the continuation of her energy, her myth, and her being and presence in our lives. There is a lot to this goddess, and there is really not much that would hold her back from doing what she felt she needed to do. So in this case, we get an interesting story that talks about how a creature that we know and love now came to be in this beautiful form. And as an anecdotal side note, I had a vision come to me very profoundly, and this sometimes happens to me when I go to paint particular deities. I have a profound experience of them, and I get the compositional idea that won't let me go until I paint it. I've had that happen with several of them, including Athena. But with Hera, the entire composition came to me vividly, and how I wanted to portray the painting, and she was most insistent. And I just knew that I had to paint this painting, and that it wouldn't let me be until I created it. And once I got that out, spent hours painting those peacock feathers. I made not only the eye symbol isn't just a regular eyeball. Those are the representation of the Greek evil eye, which is a symbol of protection as well. So, wow, that goddess, the queenly presence of Hera, just really came forward to make herself known to me in a very profound and powerful way. So when you start finding that you become attuned to the goddesses and the gods alike, because of course, psychologically speaking, and with Jung's work, he always discussed how we have all of the archetypes, both the male and female sides, the anima and the animus, and how they represent to us, the voices. In my case, I work with how the voices can present themselves that we can work with, not literally hearing voices in your head, but we do have an internal chatter. It's how to inform our emotional decisions and use what I call emotional alchemy to make decisions about how we interact with these archetypes and choose to respond to situations. It's choosing, like play acting in a way, although you're not portraying somebody outside yourself, you're using your abilities inside to work with these voices. So in the case of this incredibly powerful goddess Hera, when she comes up for you, it's going to be the kind of presence that's just very powerful, forceful. It will give you a boost confidence-wise and will bring up a lot for you. Now, remember, as I say, she is not just the rage and the jealousy and the vindictive behavior. Those are emotional responses she was prone to have given what she presides over, the sanctity of the union and bond of marriage. I mean, that's just powerful. And a lot of people, of course, have an issue within those guidelines. How do we balance the powers between spouses? How do we maintain our identities within the marriage? And what are the sacred vows we take or took when and if, of course, anybody watching this, if you have chosen to do so in your life, what does that represent and why is that powerful? When we start looking at the powerful sacred bond that a union, be it marriage or any other kind of legalized bond between people, that is Hera's power right there. It's the act of choosing, saying, promising, and being in the space of that powerful union. And as I say, it doesn't matter what your preferences are, what your background is, who you want to be with, choose to love, and spend your life with in a legal circumstance where you have made agreements that you are holding and cherishing and making that connection. That is connecting with Hera. Okay. Also, women. We think of goddesses throughout different cultures where women have felt profound connections and bonds with a particular goddess. The one that protects, looks out for, assists to lift up, that is also Hera. So we look at her also in her benevolence as being a beautiful presence for women, a protector, someone who holds in one's space the ability to connect to the higher sacred feminine energies through Hera and to be protected within her realm and sphere of influence. And then, of course, with childbirth, Hera was incredibly important to honor, to have in the space, as well as Artemis. You wanted both of those goddesses in your sphere while approaching being pregnant and then bringing a new life into the world. So being in that sacred space of honoring the great queen and having her protect you while going through this would have been profound for the ancient Greeks in the polytheistic religion and its expressions. So it's a very complex and profoundly potent goddess that we're looking at, and very powerful. She is the queen. So when we're looking at her, archetypally speaking, in a modern setting, and thinking of having those voices within us, looking at the myth, how it connects to us and with us and what it brings up, there is a lot there. Now, with every archetypal voice, there is the light side, the positive, the uplifting, and then there's the flip side. There's shadow and the energy of stressors and influences that are external or internal, depending on what you're going through, that bring up a lot of dark shadow work. And there's nothing wrong with approaching it as long as, of course, if you're having serious issues, seek professional help. My work is not meant to cure or prevent or heal any mental conditions that you might be having. But if you are not in that space and you are looking at self-empowerment, I believe these tools can absolutely help you work out and unravel issues you may be having, while also allowing you to reach for the inspiration of the positive aspects of the deity. So we'll go with the positive aspects of Hera first. If you have this need in your life to bring forward Hera and the queenly archetype, it's when you're in a situation of commanding power over something that is incredibly empowered and powerful for you. Your core values, and Hallie, I know you work a lot with those. What is sacred to you that is unwavering? What do you stand for in its purest and most positive form that not only helps yourself, but helps uplift, celebrate, and protect others? When you can identify with those and what they are, you will be able to call on the Hera archetype to bring extra regal power behind how you approach expressing them and how you put them out to the world to make a difference. Acting like the regal sort of queenly ruler of whatever it is, the expertise you have and what you bring to the world, use that Hera energy to make it even more abundant, powerful, and fulfilling. We also look at her from the perspective of having the ability to preside over others, so managerial skills per se, being able to maintain the situation in a room. If you are just even a get-together or a party, maybe you are in charge of it. Being the one that is the grande dame, the magnificent person who can walk into the room, change the entire energy just by being there, by bringing your beautiful, powerful presence in there and altering the space just by being present with what it is you're bringing to the table. So if it's a gathering, a presentation, a class, a workshop, a video conference, if you are working with children, for example, and you need to be in that space, or if you're in among peers and you may be one of the one female presences in the room, if you're in the minority, boom, Hera can come forward for you to help you through that energetically. It's the ability to use your deepest and most profound energetic and auric presence to be powerful. And this is, we're looking at the positive power, right? Bringing energy, protection, light, positive abundance, the mastery of your skills, sharing those with people, being able to say, I am the queen of this. And not only do that, but also encourage other women to feel that they can find that within themselves. We're not talking about being the, dictatorial sort of queen-like energy. And of course she has that. She's very, very commanding. Hera will do that, but we're not literally royals. So it's not something we have to worry about. We need to mitigate that a bit. Bring it into a controllable space for ourselves, temper that energy, and work within that space to help ourselves, to help others, to be powerful, queenly, and in control of all the little fingers and all the pies that we have, to be able to delegate, to be able to work with other people well. Okay, so those are all the powerful Hera-like aspects of things. The shadows that we have to be aware of. And I know every single woman has this kind of energy, whether or not it comes up on a regular basis. Raise my hand, it does come up for me. A fiery, passionate, unremitting, frustrated rage. If we feel thwarted, like our goals are not being met, our manifestations aren't coming true, we're feeling blocked. If our relationship, and then this is not my situation, I know there are women out there that struggle in marriage. I know there are women out there who have had their spouses be unfaithful to them. those things are going to come up for them. As they say, I am grateful that it's not the case for me, but I present this to be realistic for other women who may be watching this. I feel you, I understand you, and it is one of the shadows of Hera to not deal with it well, to be in a spasmodic, repetitive, addicted emotional space of repeating the same sorts of emotions over and over again. The negative mind chatter, the bad loop of beating oneself up emotionally, not feeling seen or heard, feeling like a victim. And then coming out of that space, using the rage and the anger to attempt to rebalance things and assert oneself. It's a difficult place to be in. And as I say, it doesn't just have to do with the marriage aspect of things. It can do with whatever you feel your power is, what it is you're attempting to create for yourself. And when you're not in it and you're not there, not bringing that positive energy to you, that's where that shadowy, chaotic, vengeful goddess comes up. Hera is that as well. And if you need Hera to be that for you, to propel some sort of a movement in your life towards getting yourself out of a stuck place, then use the energy positively. Use her passion to light a fire under you, to get you moving, to get the stormy energy to propel you out of this. Now we think of her, she's the queen of the heavens. So although Zeus is considered the god of thunder, right, the lightning god, she's also a goddess of the heavens. So we can think of her as producing the storms, the wind, the energy, the effort to move things forward. So you can transform the shadows into the higher aspects whenever you feel yourself there. Start bringing that energy up. Use it as momentum rather than being in a dysfunctional mind state. We don't want that. We're looking at self-empowerment, but if you're there, I'm going to give you some tools to work with in a few moments that can help you, okay? Just remembering, of course, that this is all powerful work. The archetypal work isn't simplistic, it is deep, and it is dimensional work. It is universal work. So I'm using Hera now, but in other world cultures, there are other queen goddesses that have maybe slightly different aspects. Come on, ladies, they're queens. They have the good and they have the shadow, and you need to balance them out. We can't always be like placid and, I understand that. We would love to be the placid queen, always wonderful. If you have watched the Tim Burton Alice in Wonderland films, you will see that there is the white queen, right? She's placid, she's a little sassy around the edges, making her weird potions with very strange ingredients, but everything's serene, and she's always just perfect in her energy. And then there's her sister, Erasabeth, who's the Red Queen. Bloated head, furious, vengeful, all the time. So if we can take those two queens, we bring those together, it balances out those archetypal energies of the light and shadow, the two sides of the queen coin, bring them together, harmonize them, and you will have a very balanced Hera archetype. Okay, so positive expressions and manifestations of those. Hallie, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I just wanted that just reminded me of a conversation I had actually yesterday with a workshop I led. And nice. I have this conversation all the time, so it comes into play. I love what you're saying about, kind of this harmony of the two archetypes, right? But the other piece is that I think socially, culturally, generationally, ancestrally as women, we need to start changing the dynamic and the conversation that it's not okay for us to be this queen. And whether or not someone likes the word queen, that's indifferent, right? That doesn't matter. You can use whatever word you want to use.
Yeah.
I like the word queen, so that's fine. But right, but it's like this idea, and I had this conversation the other day in my group coaching program. It's like, these women, and so many women, and I'll take ownership of this too, because I have the same struggle. Sometimes we have a hard time owning who we are, asserting ourselves, asserting what we want without feeling egocentric, like we're a bitch, like we're self-centered, that the whole world revolves around us. But this is a story that we've been told generationally, right?
Yes.
So why is that the story? And that's what, that's a big part of the work that I do, is that I'm trying to help like change that dynamic. But it's just interesting to me because I don't think that exists with men, right? And so this is not in the same way. And so this is something
Not
that I
in the
think,
same way.
right. And something with women, like we just have to start really considering, and how do we find this place of acceptance, right? Because it comes down to
Absolutely.
acceptance.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Oh, absolutely. And that is a very good point to make. It is not always easy to claim these archetypal voices and to say, yes, this is what I'm going to be. I'm attempting to bring this up so people can have the realization that they're able to do that. And it's true. And I will be getting into male archetypes soon. I'm going to be adding those classes because we have both within us as well. But culturally speaking, throughout history, unless it was an ancient matriarchal religious society, and there were some, even in Greece, the patriarchy is what was set up. And women weren't supported in having those leadership voices for themselves.
Right.
And have it like a blueprint in our ancestral heritage, our reptilian brain, whatever you want to call it, that kind of put those markers in place. And there's subtle reinforcements of that. And if you happen to follow a major religion, there's a lot of that in there.
Right. If I could just add one last comment, because I love this. This is like so in line with what I do. But there's a book, a really old book from like the early, like the beginning of the 20th century. I think it was like 1908 or something. It was published. It's called Thought Vibrations, and it's by a gentleman named William Walker something. I can't remember his last name. In any event, it's fascinating because the book is it's called Thought Vibrations, and it's about understanding the law of attraction. And it's interesting because it's like, so, it was written way before The Secret and Abraham Hicks and all these things. But my favorite affirmation that he states, that I have written on a Post-it that I've been looking at for over a year, it says, I am asserting the mastery of my real self. And to me, this is the affirmation that kind of embodies this energy of Hera is, I am asserting the mastery of my real self, meaning real, meaning all the parts of me, right? The light, the dark, but also owning it. Like I'm asserting it, I'm mastering it. Like I am my real self, and I am in 100%. So I just love that, that energy.
Absolutely. And you have absolutely no problem connecting with your Hera archetype, by the way, Allie.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a compliment. And I work with it myself, but it's a little scary. She's a little scary, let me not beat about the bush. There is something terrifying about Hera and the fact that she can flip. And if she is not happy with who you are and what you've done, she will make it known and felt in the most outrageous and difficult ways possible. So,
and that's something that I have to kind of,
right? Like,
yeah, that's something that I have to sometimes rein in, like check myself, like, whoa, you need to simmer down, girl, and not be like claws out, because
yes, right. I know. And Monica,
I can go there. I don't like. I used to go there.
Let's go ahead and, I mean, usually we do this at the end of class, but Monica, if you want to contribute to this, have at it. This is a great archetype to discuss if there's something you'd like to say.
No, I was thinking the same thing, and how, and I think it also comes back to that expectation that we repress like a lot of things, and then we explode, right? I mean, at least I do.
Oh, yeah.
Because you're like, okay, I have to be like, cool, calm, and collected, and I have to be, this person, and then it just, gets up to the point where you do fly into a blind rage, right?
Yes.
The other thing I was thinking as I was listening to Hallie was this idea of imposter syndrome, and how that's something that we see among so many women, and because they're not, asserting them, well, not necessarily asserting themselves, but they're not confident in who they are and what they know and what they can do and their potential, and so it's like you fall into this pattern of self-sabotage because of that issue of not being able to, I guess, tap into your Hera energy and say, I am the queen and I am the master, and
right.
I'm owning it, right?
Yes, absolutely. And it's interesting sometimes too, I will note, I have personally been in situations where I'll be in this situation of leading a group, being the power person in the room, be it classes, art shows, performances. And that big energy I bring out, that queenly sort of Hera energy, will sometimes attract other Heras in the same room, and it brings out their shadows. And that little bit of jealousy, or the I want to be the one controlling the room for whatever, be it the subconscious or whatever it is, starts to infiltrate or attempt to change the energy of the space. I've had it happen so many different times where I have had to then pull up my Hera energy and say, that's enough now, we are doing it this way. Or it's okay if you don't want to be here, you're welcome to leave. Well, not my favorite, but it has happened. So it's interesting when we start to see, ooh, when you notice among women, how even in the moment where you might seemingly be the person in control of the room, there are other Heras there. And their archetypes may be a little bit more prominent in general. There are some that we all have like the ability to have different archetypes more prominent, like the ones that we use on a regular basis. And that's fine. There are some women that would, relate more to Demeter or Persephone. Some women gravitate to and need to be in that Hera place a lot of the time. And if it's, for example, the mother energy, if the mother is a Hera archetype for a daughter, that may be a little bit challenging sometimes. Although Hera is the goddess of childbirth, she's not the goddess that we associate with motherhood as much. We can connect that more with Demeter, that motherly, matronly sort of, nurturing energy. You're going to see Hera being the one that's like, put their kids out there. You need to do this. This is what I'm supporting you in. I believe this about you, and I hold you to like right up here, a really high standard. Like the Hera moms may be the ones that are pushing for certain career choices, certain aspects, certain physical manifestations of their children, not just the daughters, but children in general. They may not be as warm and nurturing. So for some women for whom the Hera archetype may not be as strong, that can come across as difficult as well from the parental point of view with a Hera mother. So it's always important, and I believe this, that you can choose which voice you would prefer to use. And that's where the power of choice comes in. So whatever like issues you might be having, they're coming from archetypal triggers, and we have them in us. As I say, there's the shadow and the light to a lot of things. It has to be in balance. When it's out of balance is when we start having problems. So allow me to go ahead. I'm going to pop forward in our lesson here. It's getting late. Let's go ahead and move on to ways to invoke the goddess, which is always fun. And I'm going to talk to you about how to work with that Hera energy and to bring her forward. So the ways to manifest, you're welcome to take notes. You can photograph the screen, however you feel you need to. I would love for you to go through all of these and then work with them in the coming days to see what comes up for you archetypally while you're using the Hera archetype. So things you can do, ways to manifest the Queen of Olympus are cloud gazing, meditating while experiencing the expanse of the sky, connecting with your inner queenly or regal voice, advocating for yourself and your regal core values as queen of your destiny. Keep your temper. Recognize when being fired up is needed and when it is better to be calmly protective of your domain and opinions. Now we come to items of power, and I love these because it's symbolic. And these are things you can either decorate with, wear, have around you. Maybe you'll find them. And when you look for signs or symbols and you say to the universe, I am looking for representations while I'm out in my world and my life today that bring forward or make me recognize Hera. So maybe things that you come across in public that you realize you need to have, or just serendipitous moments that are just really powerful. So that would come to peacocks and peacock feathers, like I'm wearing my peacock feather earrings. Cows, the symbolism of the heifer, right? As we talked about in the myth of Io and Argus. Lilies, Water lilies. Gourmet wedding cake. Now, it doesn't necessarily have to be a wedding cake. It could be just an incredibly beautiful piece of cake that represents, in this essence, when we talk about wedding cake, it's the symbolism of marriage, of course. Ambrosia salad, I admit it's a guilty pleasure. I love ambrosia salad. Hardly ever have it, but it's one of those special treats. Make it for yourself if you're feeling like throwing a party or just doing something at home that's fun with your family. Pomegranates, which are a symbolism of fertility and death. They're also associated with the goddess of Persephone, but they are with Hera as well in the essence of being the fertility aspect of things and the life and death kind of aspect of being the goddess that she was. The wedding bands, whether or not you are actually married. That does not mean that you can't find a band of gold that you want to wear. You don't have to wear it on your left hand. You can wear it on your right hand, but that's a powerful symbol. Crowns, of course, queenly crowns in all of their manifestations. Tiaras, crown jewelry, like I know there are rings that are made in the shape of crowns. You can wear them on your clothing, something that makes you feel regal, decorative items with them. The evil eye, of course, being part of all of that, the watchful eyes of Argus, using the evil eye for protection. Essential oils, ylang, I always say that wrong, ylang, jasmine and sandalwood are beautiful essential oils to use while manifesting Hera. Crystals, and as you know, I work with crystals. Most of you do know that. If you don't, I'm also a jewelry designer and work with crystals and semi-precious stones. So lapis lazuli, peacock ore, moonstone, blue agate, and diamonds are ways of manifesting Hera through the gemstones and crystals. So while we're here, I'm going to go ahead and move forward now. We will move on to more of your lesson, which will have to do with, boom, journaling prompts. This is where we get to the juicy stuff, ladies. So this week, think about using these. You can photograph these, write down the ones that make the most sense for you, come back to them as you need to. There are a lot of them for Hera because Hera is extremely important and very powerful. So I put a few extra in there this time. How can I be a queen who manifests her own destiny? In what ways am I a protector, guardian, and benevolent ruler of sacred, divine energy within my own psyche? How does, and I noticed the typo, apologize, how does helping and uplifting others enhance my queenly presence in the world? What are my regal laws to live by, my core values, and what are sacred to me? Okay, so we talked about that, the core values, and Hallie goes over these too. I know that's natural for her, but what are the things in your life that are ultimately important to you? How do you want to present yourself? What are your powers? What do you feel you value most? And how do you feel that you can best represent them to yourself and others? And these are values that are to you. They're personal, they're sacred, and they may change from time to time. So it's always good to go back and revisit that for yourself. Another journaling prompt is, how can I transform stormy rage, wounded pride, and stress into a balanced, tranquil state of mind from which I may make healthy emotional choices and responses? And finally, how does Hera inspire and protect me, and what lessons does she teach me about myself? I'll leave that up for another moment, especially if you do our writing, or if you wanted to take a photograph of this. These are really powerful. Okay. So now that we've gone through all of that with the lesson, I invite you during the week ahead and beyond, while working with this archetype, to really get into it. Take some time by yourself and think about what this means to you. And remember that we have two sides to our personality. We have multiple sides to our personality. But with that queenly energy, how do you want to be remembered, so to speak? The legacy you leave behind, how do you want that to be remembered? Are you going to be the benevolent queen? Or are you going to be the stressy, vengeful, angry one? We would ideally like to be the positive. But as I say, there are moments when we need both, or where one needs to be to protect ourselves. Say, this is my wall and you are not to go beyond it by messing with my values. And I don't talk about values like a lot of people do from other like institutions or religions. I'm talking about what's important to you, like being loving, empathetic, being creative, being open to positive experiences, and to be willing to share your good qualities and gifts with others. Those are core values for me, for example, that I find very important. So when we're thinking about those things, if you ever find yourself in those situations where you're not comfortable and where you're feeling manipulated, or like somebody is trying to control that or change that about you or put it down, just say, no, this is who I am and how I present myself in the world. And nothing is going to take that away or change it, because this is how I choose to be, how I want to behave. And your emotional triggers are not going to change that. That's where the positive power comes from, using that Hera voice. When you're feeling vulnerable, you might be feeling more like a Persephone in a particular situation where you are kind of in a dark place. That's being the, again, Persephone has multiple aspects too. The vulnerable Persephone, the one who may be having emotional issues, might be a little bit uncomfortable in a situation. If somebody is putting that on you and you want to get up out of it, lift yourself up and use something different, you can use Hera, because it's so powerful. And right there, just summoning it up, and I think bringing it up like from our root chakra, from our core, and being, this is me, and just own it without hurting anybody else emotionally. Of course, we aim for being kind people, of course, but there are moments where, you know, you need to put on your crown and wear it. Like the other adage that we all knew about the panties, but I'm not going to use that one today. Put on your crown and wear it. So those are all great things to work with. And now again, as I said, usually at the end of class is when we do our open forum, but let's unmute and just come together one last time and see what comes up, given the manifestation work, ways of bringing her forward, and journaling prompts and the like. Anything you find or interested in or want to share?
I just wanted to add, well, first of all, thank you for all this knowledge. It was awesome.
Absolutely, my pleasure.
I look forward to kind of thinking more on it, letting it settle in.
Yes.
But I was thinking about, you know, women connecting with each other. And, you know, I think women have a hard time sometimes deciding who's the alpha and how do we coexist. Even somebody that you enjoy their company and they're a friend, you can still end up in these kind of clashes of power. And maybe this is like two Heras kind of coming together. And as an example, there's a girlfriend that I have that we used to be closer. We're not quite as close anymore, but that's neither here nor there. Went out to dinner last night. And one of the reasons why I would say that we're not as close is because inevitably every time we get together, she feels like she has to assert her opinion in a way that is very controlling and like makes me want to like defend my own position and like, you know, puff up my feathers or whatever, that puff up my chest, you know, this whole thing.
Feathers going.
Yeah. And I've realized that like it's a losing battle with this woman. And so it's not worth it for me to do so. And so like last night it was interesting because my husband was with us and she totally did her normal thing where she has a very strong opinion about something. And I just kept my mouth shut because I'm like, I'm not going to say anything. It's not worth it for me to like engage in that way. And it, you know, and that was the end of it. But in the past, I've definitely done that, engaged. And then it's like, you know, and so then it like brings out both of our shadows as I would perceive it. So it's, again, just kind of an interesting framework so that you can perceive others and then, you know, use your own kind of queenly, regal laws. I like that word too, to, you know, manage the room, if you will, and
absolutely
decide how to navigate your own self, because that's the only thing that we can control is our own self.
Oh, absolutely. And your emotional responses. And in a situation like that, that's perfect example of the energy among women, and when one wants to bring more of the forceful Hera to yours. And that's the great thing. You can then make that choice to step back. And that was the good choice to make for you in the moment, just to be like, nothing you say is going to change my opinion, but I don't have to lash out.
Right. Right. I don't need to engage in a fighting stance. Yeah.
Yeah, pick your battles. Pick the ones that
Exactly.
mean the most. And that's where that balanced Hera energy comes from, because we're going to be in situations where we're uncomfortable. It's just going to happen. And as I was saying before, I've had situations where I was running the room and having people undermine me in the middle of it, attempting to really undermine and humiliate me. And it was just like so transparent. And I knew that whatever this person was going through was obviously their emotional baggage they were bringing with them. And it probably didn't have as much to do with me as it did with them, but it still upset me, you know? So you have to find those methods, the balance to that, without exploding the situation. I mean, like going, you know, supernova and unleashing the storm. And of course, in a professional setting, that's really not a good thing to do. So in those cases, it was interesting to work that through. And with friends, it's an even trickier place to come from. Absolutely. Because you don't want to hurt the person whose friendship you value, but you also, hi, sweetie, hello. You also don't want them being manipulative of you either, which, of course, that Hera thing can do. And who is this handsome young man?
This is Griffin.
I thought it was Griffin. Hi, Griffin. How are you, sweetie?
My friend Elizabeth and mom.
Did Griffin recently have a birthday?
A couple months ago. It was September 10th.
Yeah, I thought I saw those birthday posts. Well, happy belated birthday, sweetie.
Yeah, and he's my Griffin archetype, you know, his.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, my mythical.
Yeah, I love the Griffin archetype.
Creature here.
Yep.
That is not spelled how you would think it is spelled.
Oh, yes, I have seen that. And there's your beautiful daughter. Hi, Sabrina.
There's Sabrina.
You have the children coming out.
Yes, I know. I'm gonna have to go in a moment.
Yeah, that's fine, of course. Well, I really appreciate your being here and sharing this
awesome.
space with me and all of your insights. See, I knew you had to be here, both of you.
Yeah, it was great.
Like,
I love
these
it.
are the women that need to be in this class today.
Yeah, I'm
Well,
glad.
yeah,
I'm glad
that's
that
great.
you're proud. It was perfect.
Perfect. Well, I appreciate it and I value your presence and your time. And of course, if you found this valuable and you feel like leaving me a tip, I do have that at the bottom of my website, which I will put in a moment. I'll actually flash to it. I'm going to bring it up. Should have had that as another share screen. I didn't think of it. I'll put it in the chat and put in the share screen so you can also see the next class. And I will be adding more. There's only one lonely little class right now, but there will be more. I have a wonderful class coming up, which isn't about a specific goddess. It is more about working with, hold on, that didn't work. Let me do this. Working with expressing a very powerful place to come from. Here we go. I got it. Which is of course, it's not responding. Thank you, Google. Well, hopefully it'll respond in a second. It's about expressing gratitude. So what we'll be doing, let me just cancel that. It's not working. I don't know what's going on. But you have the link. What we'll be expressing is how to work with gratitude. So there'll be multiple goddess perspectives in there, not just one. And we'll be doing a lot of work with manifestations and how to represent that and bring it forward as we approach Thanksgiving. So that's the Sunday before Thanksgiving. And I'm hoping that you'll join me and share it with your friends. And again, thank you